Good afternoon and welcome to the first in a series of an EAS Consulting Group and Certified Laboratories webinar on hemp-derived CBD. EAS and Certified Laboratories are members of the FSNS and Certified Group of companies. EAS is a global leader in regulatory solutions for industries regulated by FDA, with a network of over 150 independent advisors and consultants who provide comprehensive consulting, training, and auditing services, ensuring proactive regulatory compliance. In addition to regulatory assistance, the certified group of companies includes laboratories throughout the US and Canada, FSNS, Certified Laboratories, LabSmart, Microquality Labs, to name a few. These laboratories provide excellence in service, covering a variety of product areas, including supplements, food, cosmetics, OTC, tobacco, and more. Our presenter today is Paul Burns, an analytical chemist and an expert in dietary supplement testing. As the Vice President of Sales for Dietary Supplements and Botanicals at the Certified Laboratories, he helps companies meet rigorous demands of federal and state regulations. He will be joined by Tim Lombardo, EAS Senior Director for Food Consulting Services. Tim is a widely regarded expert in food safety, a microbiology expert, and he is a lead instructor through the FSPCA in preventive controls for human and animal foods. He is also a member of the U.S. Hemp Authority Technical Committee. During the webinar, you may ask any questions by typing them into the questions box. We will save all questions for the end. And with that, I will say thank you for joining us, and I will turn the presentation over to Paul and Tim.
Well, thank you very much for that marvelous introduction. My name is Paul Burns, and we're talking about our testing requirements for hemp and CBD. So to begin with, the Farm Bill, the 2018 Farm Bill, legalized hemp cultivation in the United States, opening the door to a huge market for hemp-derived products, specifically that with THC content of below 0.3% on a dry weight basis. And this THC content is the sum of the THC as well as the THC acid, according to the Farm Bill regulations. There are 3 hemp-derived products that are GRAS accepted. They are the hulled hemp seeds, the hemp seed protein powder, as well as hemp seed oil. And this leaves us a little bit of ambiguity when it comes to CBD, whether it is being regulated as a drug or as a dietary ingredient, which we will be going into the assumption that we will be using this as a dietary ingredient going forward with our testing here in this webinar. For the hemp pre-harvest testing, the USDA published its final rule in January of 2021 that provided regulations for the production of hemp. Link there for the USDA website so you can do some reading as to what those regulations are. They have set up sampling plans for farmers, and again, this is pre-harvest. Testing is required at a DAA registered laboratory for the THC content. And they've done this primarily due to the THC being a controlled substance, as well as if a hemp product comes in that is above the limit of 0.3% dry weight, it would be considered a marijuana and a controlled product. So it does need to be done at a DHC registered laboratory. Now, there are not enough laboratories that have registered as of yet, so they have extended the requirement out to, I believe, 2002 or 2003 to be a DAA registered laboratory. The total THC must include THC and THCA, the acid. The measurement of uncertainty must also be included with the testing of the hemp plant. And they strongly recommend that these laboratories be ISO 17025, but at the very least, they need to follow the ISO 17025 standard. So the intended uses of hemp and hemp-derived products are for their protein sources, a source of carbohydrates, a source of oil, and other phytonutrients. They have been added into the food beverages, juices, smoothies, protein drinks, soups and sauces, dips and spreads, dressings, alternatives to meat, which is really fascinating, desserts, baked goods and candies, cereals, snacks, nutritional bars, and of course, my personal favorites, the personal care items, creams and topicals, as well as dietary supplements. So as hemp-derived products are now entering the food chain, they come under the jurisdiction of the FDA and the Food Safety Modernization Act, which prescribes preventative controls for human foods, animal foods, produce safety, third-party certifications, food defense, which is for adulteration, and then sanitary transportation. You'll also, as we get into dietary supplements, you'll have to comply with the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, DSHEA. Now, these regulations come down to compliance, a great deal of them on the specifications and testing. The specifications must be established to ensure the quality of the product in terms of its identity, its purity, strength, and its composition. And this is applied to the raw material hemp as it's being produced, packaging components for the transportation of the hemp and its products, as well as finished products containing hemp products, in-process materials, and of course, finished products. Now, testing can be either physical, chemical, or microbiological, but must be performed to ensure that these specifications have been met. So the regulations are codified in the Code of Federal Regulations, or the CFR. And I'll be focusing on 4 key points: the identity, the purity, the strength, and composition. Identity as being, what is it? Usually we're talking about, either whole hemp identity, a hemp protein. We'll be looking at protein, just identifying exactly what it is that we are looking at. The purity, which is freedom from adulteration and contamination. Strength, the potency or the degree of concentration, particularly CBD content, and then the composition of what are the total ingredients or constituents that make up the product. So let's get into identity. So what is it and how do we test for it? Well, I've given a couple examples at the bottom of chromatographic profiles, and we can identify from the retention time and comparison to the reference standards, the content within the product of the, say, CBD and THC in a thin layer chromatography to the left, or the CBD and THC content in a HPLC or gas chromatography scan that is on the right. So identity, focusing on, say, hemp oils, can be a fatty acid profile. For hemp proteins, and identity could be an amino acid profile. And for the hemp seeds, we can do a visual inspection to ensure that we are looking at hemp rather than, say, an alternate seed or a weed that may have gotten into the product. Again, the biggest identity for hemp is to ensure that it is less than 0.3% total THC, which is the definition of hemp, as opposed to a cannabis or marijuana. It's moving on to purity, and purity is the freedom from adulteration or contamination. Economically motivated adulteration for hemp oils could be something like adding a cheaper canola oil, which would be an adulteration. For protein, another cheaper protein source, or even something as nefarious as melamine. And then, of course, hemp seeds, using a alternative plant seed that may be of similar size and look. Contamination for hemp-derived products focus a lot on microbial contamination, particularly in the mold arena, since a lot of hemp would, if it is not harvested and dried quickly, can develop mold. Storage of the hemp plant before it is processed, if it is not stored properly, could develop mold, which could lead to mycotoxins being produced by the mold. Also, if it's not stored properly, there could be other filth and extraneous matter that enters the product, say from rat hair or rat dropping type of contamination, as well as perhaps even larger fragments of metal or other plastics that could get into the product before processing. Then there's also heavy metals from the plant picking up heavy metals from the soil, or heavy metals being added to the product through its processing or poor cleaning techniques. Pesticides, a lot of pesticides are used in agriculture. So testing for pesticides, residuals, or residual solvents, which is fairly big problem with when we start looking at purified CBD and other products, as what solvents they were using and what residuals might be present, because a lot of crazy solvents can be used in the industry to purify CBD content. Strength, or the potency or degree of concentration. And this is a quantitative measurement. Hemp oils, we would be looking at the fatty acids as well as fat soluble compounds that may have also come out in that extraction process, like the THC, the CBD content, the cannabinoid content, as well as for hemp proteins, could be an amino acid profile again, and hemp seed could be a analytical or a count, or usually it's a weight type of product for quantitative, sorting out the number of hemp seeds versus other weed seeds, and that's a physical examination. CBD and other cannabinoids are definitely a chromatographic method. I've listed the common CBD or cannabinoids that are found in hemp. There are hundreds that have been identified, but the primary ones from most analytical methods focus on these 16 cannabinoids and their acids. Here is a list of 17 of them and their structures. As you can see, there's quite a variety of different structural forms for these. Here's an example of a CBD chromatographic profile by liquid chromatography using a C18 column. In blue is the reference standard, so you can see the different retention times that these methods can separate the CBD and a cannabinoid profile. And then a hemp extract example, You can see a very large CBD acid peak, which is very common, and very little THC in the product. There's also a few other peaks that are not identified, which could be other cannabinoids. Another component of hemp are the terpenes. And these can be, a short list is presented here. And these provide a lot of the odor and flavor profiles that I have understand are easily extracted and separated from your CBD, and then often are blended back together for a flavor or particular scent. Here are some of the structures of the different terpenes. They can be very small or fairly large. And here is a chromatographic profile sorted with hemp terpenes. And as you can see, you can get quite a bit of distinction between the different ones. So coming down to composition. Now, the ingredients or constituents that make up your product. This is can be applied to a lot of your raw ingredients that are coming in to a manufacturing facility, and also primarily focusing on your finished product, making sure that you know what is in your finished product. And a lot of this can be achieved through batch records that you must have. Specifications for these finished products must be established by the manufacturer, and they can be as simple as, say, a CBD content of, say, 200 milligrams. And we must be able to test to these specifications, so verifying the amount of CBD in your finished product. An important point to understand is understanding what your matrix effect is going to be and the specific testing that needs to be done on your product. Your specifications must include the type of method or which method that you have chosen for your product, because very minor changes in your formulation may affect the different methods that need to be applied. So it's vastly different testing requirements for, say, a gummy versus a capsule or a tablet, or even a food product. Particular chocolate can be very challenging. So having a specific specification that specifies the method of analysis that must be performed on the product, as well as what those acceptance criteria, say not less than or not more than, must be included in your specifications in your finished products. We'll talk a little bit about certified laboratories. We are a full service laboratory that offers analytical methods for a variety of different food and dietary supplements and cosmetics and pharmaceuticals and OTCs. We have labs with our food safety net and certified laboratories across the country, as well as Canada and Mexico. I've added a few references here. The workflow for the cannabinoid terpenes, if you're interested in the sources for the images that I've provided, can be found at those links, as well as a couple of links to the AOAC, which have been doing a lot of work in developing and pushing methods forward for the analysis of hemp and hemp products. And finally, we have our websites for certified and EAS consulting. If you'd like have any questions, you'd like to reach out to me, I can be found at certifiedlaboratories.com.
Great, thank you so much, Paul. And anyone who has questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box. Also, Tim Lombardo is reachable via the EAS Consulting Group website. Both Certified Laboratories and EAS have a Contact Us tab, which will allow you to reach both Paul and Tim directly. Additionally, while we wait for questions to come in, I did want to mention our third webinar is scheduled for November 4th. Of course, second is next week on Wednesday. November 4th is a Thursday. So when you registered for this, your Zoom webinar invitation said Wednesday, Zoom 3rd. The only reason for that is in order for me to keep the same link for all three webinars, I can only do them in a series, which has them on the same day of the week. So after next week's webinar on Wednesday, I will update it to Thursday so that you can join us on Thursday, November 4th. So I apologize for that confusion. I could not think of another way to do it and have the link be the same. So while we wait for questions to come in, Paul or Tim, would you like to just share some of the common questions you receive from customers and clients related to either testing or safety of these products?
One thing that came up recently as I was talking to manufacturers in the producing CBD content specifically for use with children or younger adults, was their customer base is a lot more savvy in the quality issues with regards to CBD, and are requiring a lot more than your typical dietary supplement consumer may require. So I noted that this company provides certificates of analysis on every single product they sell, and it's readily available through their website, which I thought was a really interesting requirement in this space, in the CBD space, which is quite different than a lot of the customers for just standard dietary supplements.
I think this is Tim. So I think another important consideration that, in answer to your question, Amy, and Paul brought it up, is the product matrix. So really understanding and working with a strong partner lab that is experienced in CBD testing, and then ensuring that they fully understand the type of products that you're manufacturing that have added CBD, because as Paul referred to, the matrix itself can affect the testing accuracy of the material.
All right.
Tim, I had a question as I was going through this process, and I never found an answer for when I was looking for it. They have a specific specification for THC content from hemp, and the actual plant. But once you start, extracting it and purifying, the CBD content, you're also going to concentrate the THC that might be present. Are there guidelines yet for where we need to be with THC, in post-production?
All finished products that contain CBD still must meet that 0.3 threshold, and so yeah, there's not a different specification or a different guidance. As long as the finished product is below 0.3 for the THC content, then then that's where the standard is. Anything above that is considered, as you mentioned, it falls into the marijuana classification and the controlled substance.
Yeah, thank you.
Since I don't see any questions out there, I think we can wrap it up today. So Paul and Tim, thank you both so much for your presentation, and thank you everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern for part 2 of our webinar series. And our speaker will be EAS independent consultant, Dr. Omar Oyarzabal. And thanks so much, everyone. Please make a note for the third in our series being on Thursday, the 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much. Bye.